This is Seo Jio, an ordinary art teacher, and this is the fire that takes his life. But for Jio, dying is only the first brushstroke. He wakes inside a world he recognizes instantly, the exact painting he once drew with his own hands, now real and breathing all around him. And inside the canvas, he's a god. Anything he draws becomes real: fruit, creatures, whole landscapes bleeding to life straight off the page. One quiet teacher, alone in a painted paradise, holding the power of a creator and no reason to ever leave. But something is seeping into his canvas from the outside, a darkness he never painted, learning to move on its own. And the deeper he paints, the closer he creeps to the truth of what he has really become. Let's get into it. It starts with fire. Seo Jio school is burning, and instead of running, he walks straight into the blaze toward the one room that ever felt like his. He wanted to die in his favorite place, the art room, surrounded by the only thing he ever loved. So he lets the flames take him. The heat swallows everything, and Jio is certain that is the end of his short, quiet life. Instead of darkness, he opens his eyes to a sun-drenched forest, soft grass under his hands, and not a single burn on his body. Then it hits him. He knows his place. This is the painting he drew, the exact landscape from his own canvas, somehow turned into a living world. Seo Jio, a nobody art teacher in his old life, is now standing inside his own artwork, alive and completely alone. The world is gentle and impossibly alive, little creatures wandering the fields, everything glowing like a dream he never wants to wake from. And then he discovers the first rule of this place. Anything he draws here becomes real. He sketches apples, and ripe fruit drops into his palm. He sits and draws for hours, testing the limits, watching food and objects bloom out of blank paper like magic. But there's a catch. The living things he draws come out hollow, warm bodies with nothing behind the eyes, life he can shape but never truly give. He learns he can even reach through the frame of a painting, pushing his hand past the canvas into whatever lies on the other side. Power crackles off his brush in bright flashes, and slowly Jio realizes the rules of reality here bend entirely to his hand. Stranger still, plants and landmarks he never drew start appearing on their own, as if the painted world is quietly growing beyond him. Odd little creatures begin to show up too, curious and harmless, populating a world that seems to be dreaming itself into existence. And somewhere along the way, Jio understands he has become one of the awakened, a person pulled into this canvas and given its power. For the first time in his life, there is no job, no pressure, no pain. Just eating, sleeping, and painting. He has never been happier. He cooks with fruit and honey. He conjures from nothing, living like a king in a paradise built entirely from his own imagination. But there is one final rule of this world, the one Jio has been quietly avoiding, and it changes everything he thinks he understands. Seo Jio did not simply fall into a painting. In a very real sense, Jio became the painting, bound to it in a way he cannot yet explain. And that is when the piece cracks. A darkness he never drew begins to stir at the very edges of his perfect little world. Something is watching him from inside his own canvas, a twisted, grinning thing that has no business existing in a paradise he built. The dream is not as safe as it looked. Whatever this painted world truly is, Jio is about to learn it has teeth. Jio's head snaps up in his painted paradise, catching movement at the edge of his world. He wonders aloud if that was just a wild animal passing by. He shrugs it off and goes back to the good life, tucking into a warm meal he conjured himself, murmuring that this is nice. But far away, in the burned husk of his old school, two scavengers pick through the ruins and marvel that only one thing survived the flames untouched. It is a painting in a heavy golden frame, and its title stops them cold. It is called Portrait of Jio. They realize this is no ordinary canvas. The thing radiates power, and they decide it must have drifted out of a dungeon. A grinning scavenger snatches it fast, already dreaming of the payout, certain the Collector Guild will go absolutely crazy for a find like this. And so, while Gio lounges happily inside his canvas, his portrait is hauled into the human world and mounted under a spotlight for sale. At a members-only auction of the Collector Guild, a bidder's paddle shoots into the air, the painting climbing higher and higher in price. Behind the scenes, a smooth-talking buyer flatters a former research team leader from the association, angling to pull him into the deal. The sharp, white-haired man in a black suit brushes the offer aside, saying he has no wish to stand out these days. He warns that rumors of trouble in the gallery won't do any of them any good, and that they are already preparing countermeasures. An aide slides over a thick file, explaining that this is the compiled data from a rash of ghost sightings haunting the collection. The report is unervingly precise. The ghost stands roughly 188 centimeters, black cloak, pale skin, and always the exact same appearance. There is even a composite sketch built from witness testimony, and the note attached admits the ghost is unmistakably handsome. The man frowns over the pages. For a monster supposedly hidden away in a gallery, this one seems to have no intention of hiding itself at all. And that is what makes it wrong. Every single entity that ever crawled out of the dungeons was hostile to humans, without exception. So a truly harmless monster would be unthinkable, the kind of thing that would splash across every front page in the world. Yet the reports all say the same thing. When the ghost appears, it politely offers its name, saying only, "Hello, I am Seo Jio." A tall, hooded figure looms out of the dark in the witness accounts, calm and courteous even as the staff freeze in terror. Even when a staff member is too petrified to meet his eyes, the ghost simply keeps talking, gentle and patient. The collector by Sabiel only grins wider. Being told the piece is more dangerous than anything they have ever collected makes him want it even more. He drinks in the painted face, its yellow eyes almost alive, and admits that if human hands made this, the craftsmanship is truly magnificent. He turns the frame in his grip, unsettled by its vitality, as if a real living person were sealed somewhere inside the canvas. And all the while, blissfully unaware his portrait is being auctioned and feared, Gio stands before his easel in the sunlit fields, laughing without a care in the world. Gio's painted world is still bright and green, the quiet paradise he built with his own brush stretching out in every direction. But the story shifts outside the canvas, where a figure steps into a grand hall lit by tall windows, drawn toward one painting in particular. In a warm, richly decorated room, two people speak in hushed voices about the strange artwork that has appeared among them. A polished, red-haired gentleman studies the canvas closely, the persistent visitor who keeps returning to speak with it. This place, we learn, is the gallery a beloved grandfather once cherished, its polished floors and framed art running down a long, elegant corridor. Someone mutters that it is a harsh world out there, and floats a chilling idea for the portrait no one can explain. A man lingers by the window, weighing what to do with a painting that simply refuses to make sense. With an easy laugh, the visitor bids the artwork farewell, promising he will see it again tomorrow, sir, as if it were an old friend. Inside the canvas, Gio is oblivious to all of it, lounging in the cozy little home he conjured for himself. He stretches out and takes it easy, a man with nothing to do but enjoy the world he rules. At his desk, he tinkers and creates, endlessly experimenting with the powers his strange new life keeps handing him. A glowing screen flickers to life before him as the system offers up its latest gift, an elixir brewing method for medicinal tea. Standing before a framed painting, Gio starts to notice how wrong his body has become. He feels neither cold nor hot, and so he never sweats. It runs deeper than that, he realizes with a frown. He never truly hungers, and he never once needs to use the bathroom. The thought stops him cold, and he looks up with a quiet, unsettled good heavens as the truth begins to sink in. He wanders out into the grassy fields of his painting, turning the strange facts of his existence over and over in his mind. From within the artwork, he can somehow see out into that long gallery, where for 11 days now the same man has returned to pitch himself to him. Then the gentleman's pleasant manner slips into a hungry grin as he names the offering he deals in, a sinful human or a flawless, pure one. For a heartbeat, something monstrous shows through the polished mask, a shapeless darkness that makes Gio's paradise feel suddenly fragile. Back in the gallery, the visitor leans close and asks the silent portrait whether it refuses to answer simply because he is speaking Korean. He studies the painting's face intently, searching for the smallest flicker of a response and finding none. Undeterred, he gives a polite nod and declares that very well, he shall simply see it again, refusing to give up on the strange portrait. The words haunted portrait hang in the air, and Gio realizes the danger creeping toward his little paradise is no longer just a whisper. In the deepest dark, a violet glow pulses like a waking eye, and whatever Gio never painted is finally beginning to move. Far from the painted world, a glass tower rises over the city. This is Collector, one of South Korea's top 300 guilds, and something has gone very wrong inside it. A calm, silver-haired curator walks the guild's gallery halls, suitcase in hand, calling over a problem no one can explain. He meets with the staff, who lower their voices to share the rumor spreading through the building. They say there is a ghost. It haunts the gallery on the 5th basement floor, and he shrugs that ghost sightings are nothing new in a place like this. But 17 complaints in 2 weeks is different, and the men in the office admit this one is becoming a real headache. The curator sets down his cup and asks, plainly, what exactly they would like him to do about it. They call him dependable and even offer him general manager, but he brushes his hair back and waves it off, saying he would rather not stand out. So they hand him the file, the compiled data from every ghost sighting collected so far. The reports paint a clear picture. A man near 188 centimeters, black cloak, pale skin, and by every witness account, strikingly handsome. For a monster supposedly hiding in a gallery, he notes, this thing shows absolutely no intention of hiding at all. And that is what unnerves him, because every single entity that ever crawled out of the dungeons has been hostile to humans. Yet this one leaves no casualties, and one detail stops him cold. The report claims the ghost has been handing people gifts. There he is, a hooded figure in the dark who approaches terrified staff and simply introduces himself. Hello, he says, I am Seo Jio. The conversations are completely ordinary. He never pries, never pushes, and when it ends, he offers each person a parting gift. The gift, as it turns out, is food, small box treats pressed into the hands of people who came to work terrified. Suspicious, the guild borrows a prisoner to taste test one of the treats, certain it must be some kind of trap. But the result flips everything. It was not poison at all. On the contrary, the curator murmurs, it was medicine. Not just any medicine, but the exact remedy each person secretly needed, as if the ghost could read the ailment inside their body. And that is the terrifying part, because Dungeon Goodwill has a history. 11 years ago, a delegation returned from such kindness as writhing, many-eyed deformities. So a monster is still a monster, an absolute enemy by classification. The curator closes the file and says he will handle this one himself. It is his specialty. It all began the moment the guild leader hung a single artwork on the 5th basement floor, a piece titled The Portrait of Gio. In the gallery's red glow, a face stirs, and curator Yu Song-un steps forward to take charge of the dangerous new painting. His eyes sharpen with quiet resolve. Whatever is bleeding out of that portrait, he intends to walk straight into it. And so curator Yu Song-un begins his investigation into the portrait of Gio, unaware of exactly who is waiting on the other side. A sharp-eyed, silver-haired investigator moves through a grand hall, murmuring that his target is finally out in the open. And there he is, a cloaked, barefoot figure standing alone in the glow of an enormous art gallery. Black cloak, black hair, barefoot, a tall silent frame. It matches the physical description in the records exactly. The investigator leans over his documents, sizing the stranger up, deciding whether this ghost is shy or dangerously cunning. Bare feet pad softly across the marble, so quiet the staff supposedly nicknamed him the ghost. The investigator watches the hooded figure drift from painting to painting and wonders, wait, is he actually just admiring the art? The cloaked stranger lingers before each canvas, calm and unhurried, as if he has all the time in the world. Then the hood shifts, and a pale, striking face beneath the black hair comes into view. In a single frozen instant their eyes meet, and the investigator's whole body goes rigid. Because behind those eyes is something vast and endless, a pair of burning red eyes swallowing the dark, a presence that inspires pure dread. The investigator's confidence shatters, his face draining white as raw terror crashes over him. Tears spill down his cheek before he can stop them, his body reacting to a fear his mind cannot even name. His legs give out, and he crumples to the gallery floor, undone by a single glance. He scrambles backward, breath ragged, whispering that this is insane as he tries to put distance between them. Pulling himself together, he logs the day, the first field investigation of the portrait of Gio concluded. But flip to the other side of that terror, and we find a small startled creature by a tree and a very different truth. Gio replays the whole encounter, baffled, wondering if that person hid because he was the one who got scared. Sitting cross-legged in his quiet garden, Gio resolves to try harder to seem like nothing more than a harmless portrait. He stretches out in the grass, reaching for the little animals, aching for something that will stay close instead of running away. Day 2 of the investigation, and the world sees only a beautiful framed portrait where a lonely soul actually lives. Then, standing before that very portrait, the investigator gathers his nerve and asks, "Would you like to speak with me?" He offers a warm, genuine smile, and after everything, Gio quietly answers yes, he would like to talk. Gio presses his hands together, overwhelmed, deeply moved that someone finally wanted to reach out to him instead of run. A silver-haired visitor stands in a grand marble hall, gazing up at Gio's blessed portrait and marveling that this one shows no shred of fear, even facing a painting like him. From within the frame, Gio politely apologizes for what happened the day before, and the visitor notes how considerate this painted man is, a rare, courteous soul. The portrait of the dark-haired painter watches back, and the visitor gathers his nerve to ask the simplest question. "May I ask your name?" The silver-haired man explains he is only following the same dialogue procedure once used with the previous disciple of this place. He straightens, hand to his chest, and introduces himself properly as the second-in-command sent to speak with the portrait. When Gio answers plainly through the frame, the man is stunned. "He's just telling me all of this, just like that?" Then Gio steps out from behind a tree in the flesh. Asked if he can truly leave the portrait, he calmly says yes, he can. The visitor sits before the framed painting and asks the question that has been bothering him. "Might you be lonely in there?" The portrait answers without hesitation. "I'm not lonely." Solitude, it seems, is exactly what Gio wants. Gio admits the truth. He has already spoken too many words in his old life, and he always dreamed of a future where he would never have to speak again. A quiet green forest opens up, a small creature nestled in the grass, and Gio confesses this silent place is absolutely perfect for him. The silver-haired man leans in with a more personal question. "Were you once a human, in the past?" In a memory, Gio appears in a plain uniform and answers evenly. Yes, he was once an ordinary human, just like anyone else. The man's mind turns dark, picturing the humanoid monsters, hybrid things that clawed their way into a new reincarnation as beasts. Walking the portrait gallery, he reasons that Gio must be one of those, a monster who still remembers being human, which is why he calls himself one. He studies the ornate golden frame and the serene face inside it, unsettled by how impossibly peaceful this creature seems. Sitting alone in the vast hall, he asks whether Gio ever gets bored in his endless quiet. Sometimes comes the honest reply, and when boredom strikes, Gio says he usually just has a meal, a strangely ordinary answer for a living painting. Before leaving, the visitor apologizes on behalf of his eccentric guild leader, insisting Gio did not seem like a bad person at all. He walks out through the shining corridor, luggage in hand, still stunned that he just held a real conversation with a painting. Left alone, Gio experiments with his power and presses confirm on a strange prompt, already hearing his life about to get a whole lot crazier. A tiny bird lands near him as the system rewards his tinkering, and Gio grins that he is always on the right track. Following the system's guidance, he steps into a place called the Breathing Sea, a realm connected straight to Giovanni's own mental world. Deep inside that dreamlike world, Gio meets a long-haired stranger and offers a cautious, quiet hello, the encounter that ends his solitude for good. A white-haired hunter strides through the tower with his briefcase, bringing up the one subject everyone keeps circling back to, that strange portrait. The director swirls his glass and muses that this entity is nothing like the monsters they have faced, the kind that smothered people with mindless goodwill. What unnerved the most is that the thing perceives itself as human, complete with a sense of good and evil, judging everyone by its own private standards. At a quiet counter, he asks the hunter to work for the association as research material, and the man flatly answers, "Do you really think I would?" The director rests his chin on his hand, intrigued. He asks the hunter to keep talking with Gio, to get close, and to introduce him too. The white-haired hunter warns that being introduced only to be ignored would be humiliating, so he had better find out exactly what Gio likes first. Somewhere a staff member throws his head back laughing, wondering aloud how every single person on his payroll ended up this cold. The hunter never once compromised, no matter how low a rank he faced. If a presence alone can pressure people and cloud their judgment, that is real power. Inside a hushed gallery, a lone figure sits before a single-framed portrait and gently asks it, "Might you be lonely?" From within the frame, the dark-haired Gio answers plainly, "I am not lonely," his painted eyes calm and unbothered. The hunter settles onto the bench and explains that only staff come here to tend the artwork, so he arranged these visits so the portrait would not sit in silence. Gio says it is not loneliness at all. He has already spoken too many words in his old life, and he always dreamed of a future where he would not have to speak. A shaft of green light falls through a quiet forest where a small black cat waits, the exact kind of still, wordless place Gio always wanted. Elsewhere, Gio wakes in his own painted world, morning light spilling across the bed as a new day in his private paradise begins. A glowing book floats into his hands, and the system is quietly titled every landscape he finished the day before: The Breathing Sea, Animal Kingdom, City of the Void. Gio can only shrug at it, dazzled. If the system wanted the chance to name his artwork, well, who is he to argue with something this useful? He frowns and turns over the phrase the system keeps using, wondering what exactly a compatible person is and why it matters. He steps up to a darker canvas hanging on the wall, the frozen ruin he named City of the Void, and studies what he has made. Sitting on the floor beside the frame, he presses yes to register a dimension that does not yet exist, already hearing his life get a whole lot crazier. Back at the gallery, Gio leans out of his portrait and tells the hunter, Yu Song-un, that the man can bring him a little entertainment in return. The painted Gio makes a simple request: please draw an apple, right here on this portrait. Brush in hand, the hunter reluctantly paints an apple onto the canvas, grumbling that altering an artwork like this is deeply unpleasant. Then it drops out of the frame entirely, a real red apple thudding onto the gallery floor, admittedly not the prettiest one. The hunter lifts the apple to his mouth and simply bites into it, eating the fruit that a moment ago was only paint. Gio stares in stunned silence, barely able to believe it. Someone actually ate the apple he drew, and for once that quiet connection leaves him speechless. A silver-haired appraiser stands before Gio's painting, and even he can barely believe his eyes. He says he has never seen anything like this in his life. Inside an ornate gold frame, the painted figure bites into a real apple. He calls it delicious, perfectly ripe, with a wonderful aroma. A hand drags a brush across the canvas. The apple was sketched with nothing but cheap paint, yet somehow it gained real scent and flavor. The portrait explains it plainly. He is just an ordinary human, but by the logic of this painting, there is almost nothing he cannot accomplish inside it. A hand reaches down toward fresh food. On days he does not feel like cooking, he simply paints a finished meal and eats it. The man in the frame tilts his head and asks the visitors a quiet question. Do they find all of this fascinating? We see the world Gio built, a man in a dark suit standing in a sunlit green forest, a landscape he painted while testing the limits of his power. He sits at an easel and paints a single red rose onto the canvas, shaping his little world one careful stroke at a time. Then the painting does something impossible, cupping a glowing red gem in its hands as cosmic light pours around it. The portrait offers the jewel forward as a gift. Here, it says, is your requital for the kindness you showed. A hand lifts the burning red gem into the light. The appraiser can hardly process it. He created this treasure simply by painting it. Holding the gem, the silver-haired appraiser repeats the word back slowly. The source, he says, as the pieces begin to click together. A vast cosmic ring blazes in the dark. This is the source, a transcendent entity that manages the balance of the whole world. Light pours through a glowing tree, and the truth settles in. Gardeners of this world know that from such power, monsters are born. The two investigators talk it through in the gallery. Order and chaos have completely different origins, but Gio, they realize, is different from both. The portrait speaks warmly of another canvas. They are his new family, he says, and he had fun painting quite a few of them. A young man stands surrounded by glowing blue birds he brought to life. He admits even he was surprised the first time they took flight. Painted birds flutter out of their own frame. The appraiser stares and asks the question that unsettles him. Do these birds actually have a soul? A hollow, ghost-white human figure stands in the dark grass. Creating a real person like that, the painter insists, will be far too extraordinary, and he's not that special. In the quiet of the gallery, the silver-haired man turns and presses the point. Does the collector really have no intention of sending this to the association? The answer is absolute. A man throws his arms wide and declares it. He wants art, not a weapon. The red-haired collector jabs a finger forward with a fierce grin. That, he says, is exactly why he founded this guild and this company. But the mood turns. A face fills the frame, a single tear sliding down beneath a wide, glassy eye. Darkness swallows everything, and a pale ring of light flickers in the black. We can't stop that thing, a voice warns, and the piece begins to crack. Hands hover over a table scattered with red and blue gems and stacks of gold coins. A voice calls to find a natural disaster, one they can somehow still communicate with. A man stands over a workbench lined with glittering jewels and glass vials, calling the whole thing an absolute miracle, an incredible stroke of luck. A silver-haired young man in a dark suit stares wide-eyed, barely able to breathe out the words, "Is that truly you?" Elsewhere, Seo Jio stands by a tall window, an unrolled scroll open in his hands, calm inside his painted paradise. A single golden koi drifts through warm light, one more gentle thing conjured out of his world. The camera pulls close on Gio, his hair split half black and half silver, his eyes fixed on someone we cannot yet see. He faces a blonde stranger and asks if the sea really swallowed his home. The man, Giovanni, answers yes. It was consumed by the water and met its end. The two of them stand together in a dark, weightless void as Giovanni quietly begs him, "Please listen." A lonely planet hangs in the black of space, a whole world turning into a dungeon, bound by certain unbreakable rules. Gio repeats the word back, a dungeon, remembering the stories he once heard about such places. Giovanni, robed in white and gold, tells him something impossible, that the two of them are both Gio. A radiant, angelic figure descends through a flood of golden light, vowing to live on within something he calls the source. Gio looks up, thrown by the word, murmuring the source, as if it should already mean something to him. Standing beside Giovanni, he learns the truth. The very place where he lives is the source itself, and he is already inside it. A blazing sun deity spreads across the sky as Giovanni asks only that Gio remember him and speak with him now and then. As a priest molded by sunlight, Giovanni swears it will not be a great burden, that watching over his god is a small thing to ask. Then his composure breaks. Giovanni's face crumples with tears as he says a name, Aria, that this was his student's name. Gio catches it, quietly asking back, Aria, sensing the grief buried inside the request. Later, a silver-haired man in a sharp black suit leans back and explains it plainly, comparing the source to a single human body. Gio's portrait watches from an ornate frame as he asks whether being a gardener is really something someone absolutely has to be. In a soft, chibi moment, Gio and the silver-haired man crouch over a tiny cat, a monster that has completely lost its hostility toward humans. By the water's edge, the silver-haired man in a long coat suggests it warmly. The water is warm, so why not dip your feet in? His reflection ripples across the dark water, and he notices it at once, water with a strangely sweet scent, one that resembles a sea he knows. Then a blonde figure rises out of the depths, staring straight at him, and asks the question that ends everything, Seo Jio, right? Far outside the painted world, in a cold, gray city, a silver-haired awakened man weighs a risky proposal, one that reaches toward Gio's canvas. They still do not know Seo Jio's true identity. One of them admits a single golden eye burning, but there is no stopping what is coming anyway. Standing before a framed painting, a man in a dark coat offers to guide Gio through the outside world. Just bring yourself, he says, and I will show you. The time has finally come to return to society, he decides, turning a yellow rose in his hand as he agrees with the one he calls you Sonyuke. Back inside his own canvas, Gio's little golden bird bobs on a lily pad, cheeping that its dad has an awful lot on his mind. Under a wide straw hat, Gio tends his garden, his thoughts drifting to the strange gap between his painted world and the reality outside. Wiping his brow beneath a bright blue sky, he tells himself he would like to close that resolution gap somehow. He steps back to admire his little vegetable patch, another quiet project that came out exactly the way he pictured it. The golden chick hops up onto his hat, and Gio laughs that it is already doing its part just by being this cute. He decides the little bird finally needs a name, trying out Golden Child as it waddles along the garden path beside him. Even Gio admits that one is a terrible idea, chuckling that dads just blurt out silly things sometimes. Cupping the bird in his hands, he offers honey instead, since it has such a sweet, warm little color. Then he settles in to finish a landscape, his brush moving across the canvas with easy, practiced focus. Beneath his hand, a vast and restless ocean spreads out, waves rolling as if the sea itself were breathing. The next morning the system stirs him awake, new notifications blinking for his attention while the chick nestles nearby. It has gone and named his seascape for him, framing it in gold and titling it the breathing sea. The system named every landscape I finished yesterday. Gio realizes, a little unnerved that it acted entirely on its own. Reading deeper at his desk, he puzzles over two unfamiliar words the system keeps using, a compatible person and synchronization. A compatible person, it explains, is an entity within a dimension whose soul and body he can sync with to travel it, though the idea coils into something eerie. Reaching a painting the world insists does not exist yet. Gio presses yes and registers a brand new dimension all his own. He dives into the breathing sea and finds it linked to someone's mental world, murmuring aloud, "So where exactly is this?" He lands somewhere unsettling, like an old abandoned hospital, muttering that at least the system is being helpful this time. And there, waiting in the pale mist, stands a golden-haired stranger he is certain he never painted. The elegant figure turns to face him, and Gio finds himself standing before the one the system marked as his compatible person, Giovanni. Gio comes face to face with a stranger who wears his own features, and the man tells him softly that they look very much alike. The golden-haired double smiles gently, saying the two of them likely share far more than just a face. Gio lifts a hand and admits he could never smile as warmly as this calm, radiant version of himself does. The blonde reassures him it is a cute, honest worry, and promises that from now on Gio will learn to smile like him too. A system window flares to life before Gio, flagging a dimensional entity and offering to let the two of them synchronize. Gio hesitates at the window, afraid that merging would mean stealing this stranger's body and soul away from him. But the golden man only shakes his head. It is not theft, he says, because he is already dead. For a moment, Gio's face splits between light and shadow, half himself and half the shining stranger staring back. Gio asks if the sea truly swallowed his home, and the man named Giovanni confirms his whole world was consumed and met its end. A drowned planet hangs in the dark, its lands now a dungeon bound by strange rules, an entire world turned into a game board. Gio murmurs the word dungeon, memories stirring of the vast, forgotten places he has only heard whispered about. Giovanni says that the moment Gio called out to him, he understood the truth. The two of them are both Gio. Gio turns his face up, quietly repeating the word source, trying to grasp what this strange other self means. It may still feel like an unfamiliar idea, Giovanni tells him, but Gio is already living inside that very source. Hands folded, the priest makes a humble request, asking Gio to please look after the sun god of his ruined world. As a priest shaped by sunlight, Giovanni swears the task will not be a heavy burden to carry. Gio and the blonde stand together as Gio asks whether there is anything else the man wants before he fades. One name catches Gio off guard, and he repeats it back with a question. Aria. Tears slip down Giovanni's face as he explains that Aria was the name of one of his students. He compares the source to a single human body and a dungeon to just one small part of it, a vessel, a heart, and eye. Later, beside clear water, Giovanni says the water is warm and invites Gio to dip his bare feet in. Gio lowers his feet into the shimmering water, catching a scent unlike the odorless world he came from. The golden priest goes still, wondering aloud why he can sense the scent of the sea, the very sea that drowned his home. From beneath the surface, a fading voice reaches for Gio, uncertain and searching. You are Seo Jio, right? A cluster of office workers crowd around a strange official notice, one of them waving it off with a tired, forget interpreting it. The warning is unsettling. Whatever has appeared, it says, is obviously not human, and a dark aura coils in the air as they read it. Hunched at their desks, the workers grumble that digging into it just means more unpaid overtime piling on top of everything else. Somewhere across the city, a cool white-haired man in a black suit brushes the whole thing off. Nothing too complicated, he says. He and Gio ride the near-empty subway, where fares have climbed so high that ordinary people can barely afford a ride at all. The two move through the quiet station side by side, one wrapped in a long dark coat, the other steady and unhurried beside him. They stop for cheap street food, sharing fried snacks and fish cake on a bench like it is the most normal thing in the world. The talk drifts to power, and how the true danger of a being depends entirely on the scale of the story it carries. At a market stall, a vendor in a bucket hat serves them, while the conversation turns to how outsiders can barely get into the city. The white-haired man admits it is hard to explain that this is simply the ugly social climate these days. A gloved hand holds up an ID card. In this world, he explains, a single card decides whether you count as a person at all. He lays out the cast of it. Hunters ranked B and above sit at the top as first-class citizens, while criminal red hunters sink to the bottom. The lowest have no IDs and no records at all, scraping out a life in ruined stretches between the city and the provinces. Anyone stamped ninth grade, he says flatly, is not even treated as human, and can be cut down on sight. It all traces back to the dungeons, glowing gates of crystal and monster cores that can tear open anywhere at any moment. Towering walls ring the city to hold back the monsters that survived the great cataclysm and settled onto the earth. Finally, they settle in to eat, a steaming pan of food sizzling between them as chopsticks dig in. Gio leans back, marveling that even after the world twisted itself apart over 30-odd years, the food is still absolutely delicious. They drift into a warm indoor garden, lush and green even in the dead of winter. A tamed white cat lounges by a koi pond, one of the monsters that has completely lost its hostility toward people. His companion nods toward the warm water and offers to let Gio dip his feet in, promising no one is around to mind. The water carries a strangely sweet scent, clear and deep, and Gio's own reflection stares back up at him from the surface. Something stirs in him, the buried scent of a sea from somewhere far away, and he lifts his gaze to the sky, uneasy. Then a pale, long-haired figure rises out of the deep water, eyes fixed on him, and asks if he is Seo Jio, shattering the quiet in an instant. Gio stands in a crowded city street, a dark-haired figure lost among strangers, taking in a world that moved on for decades without him. A sharp-dressed young man draws every eye, even with his presence suppressed. The whispers say he radiates the aura of at least an A-rank hunter. In the dead of winter, the pair moves carefully through the snow, one warning the other to keep his hood up so no one recognizes his face. A sleek monorail glides over the reborn skyline as the two of them head across the city toward a restaurant. Hood pulled low, Gio marvels under his breath, wondering how the world could possibly change this much in just 41 years. At the gate, his silver-haired companion raises a glowing hunter's card for the toll, its light never seeming to run dry. A train slides into an eerily empty platform, and he notes that ordinary people can barely afford public transit anymore. Seated in the near-empty car, his companion remarks that at this hour there should be at least 10 passengers, not this silence. Outside the windows, a crimson train streaks past a wall of skyscrapers, the city taller and stranger than anything Gio remembers. The silver-haired man lowers his eyes, admitting he isn't even sure how to explain the ugly social climate of these days. A gloved hand lifts a citizen ID, and he explains that everyone is now sorted into rigid grades stamped onto their card. He lays out the ladder. B-rank hunters and above sit at the top as first grade, unless they are branded criminal red hunters. Down in the shadows, the poor huddle around fires, second and third grade, scraping by inside and outside the city walls. And at the very bottom crouch the recordless and the monstrous fifth grade, people the law says can be killed on sight. Gio's face hardens as it sinks in. This is not just a widening gap between rich and poor. It decides who even counts as human. A winged beast circles a towering spire, a reminder that monsters still haunt the world beyond the safety of the walls. Passing a quiet temple gate, his guide explains that even the walls are built from monster remains so they can survive the attacks. They finally settle in over a hot, bubbling stew, and his companion notes he picked this place because it serves no monster meat. Gio digs in, stunned that the world could transform so drastically in 3 decades, and yet the food still tastes this good. Afterward, the two wander a magically warmed garden, green and blooming even in the depth of winter. At the water's edge, the silver-haired man invites him to dip his feet in, promising no one else is around at this hour. Gio crouches beside the clear, deep pool, struck that the water carries the sweet scent of a sea he once knew. Then the surface erupts, and a long-haired figure surges up out of the glowing water, crying his name. Face to face in the shimmering pool, the stranger fixes on him and asks the question that stops his heart. "Are you Seo Jio?" A single tense face fills the frame, streaked and bloodied, eyes locked on something in the dark. Whatever is closing in, this fight has already turned ugly. A hooded figure haloed in gold refuses to flinch, calmly giving up his name as if none of this frightens him at all. Then the thing across from him sheds its disguise. A vast, drowned blue face looms out of the black, and the truth lands hard. It was never human. Cloaked in shadow, he spells out the cold rule of this world. No matter how perfectly a creature mimics a person, it can never truly become one of them. Meanwhile, far calmer, another story unfolds in a quiet room, a laptop glowing on the floor, and the day just beginning. A cloaked figure drifts down a long hallway and pauses to take in the view from high above the city, in no hurry at all. This is Gio, and in his cupped hand sits a tiny chick he simply dreamed into being. He murmurs that it is a shame he cannot keep feeding something he pulled straight out of a dream. Dressed sharp and glancing up, Gio quietly hopes this trip beneath the surface goes off without any trouble. The pair glide out across open water on a small boat, the sea stretching wide around them as their outing truly begins. Gio leans into the breeze and breathes it in. Even here, deep along the waterway, he swears he can already smell the sea. In his dark coat, he explains himself gently, saying he only stepped in because he was worried the other might get hurt. The frame pushes in tight on a pair of glassy teal eyes, brimming and unspoken, caught in a moment softer than either will admit. His elegant companion lights up with amusement, teasing that a flat yes or no is hardly any kind of real answer. Gio catches the strange phrasing and echoes it back under his breath, one word snagging his attention. Mermaids. And right on cue, a monstrous shape stirs in the black water, proof that things tied to the sea and its old legends really do surface out here. A striking, long-haired figure fills the frame, poised and unreadable, the kind of face that plainly knows far more than it lets on. Over a candlelit table, Gio repeats the words back as a question, a stationary dungeon, admitting he still barely knows the different kinds that exist. The tale unfolds of a blazing kitchen swallowed whole, an ordinary chef dragged into a dungeon built entirely around cooking. Seated like royalty, his companion finishes the story, how clearing that place earned the chef a rare class all his own. Back at the table, Gio rests his chin on his hand and asks, warmly, whether the meal was to the other's liking. He softens into a rare, easy smile, admitting the evening reminded him of the old days, sharing a meal with his students. And bathed in warm light, his hooded companion answers in kind, saying quietly that he is already looking forward to the next time. Gio wanders a quiet palace in traditional dress, face half hidden under a wide gat, and for a moment the old world tugs at him. It stirs up memories of his teaching days, dressing bored students up in hanbok and snapping photos, the small joys of a life he lost. A sharp, white-haired young man turns to him. This is Yu Song-un, a curator who sees far more of this world than most people ever could, because floating all around them are strange, glowing creatures, shimmering purple things that ordinary eyes simply cannot register. Gio cradles one of the little lights in his palm and asks Song-un to explain exactly what these things really are. Song-un calls them children of the source, beings born from the roots of this world that disguise themselves and hide their true nature. Munching casually as he talks, the curator explains that in the past almost no one could even perceive these creatures. He admits he is one of the rare talents who can see them clearly, a gift that sets him apart from everyone around him. Gio takes it in quietly, half convinced this strange man has just sized him up and filed him away as a monster too. Then a commotion breaks out nearby, a knot of men in traditional dress tangled up in a sudden, ugly fight. One figure radiates a danger so thick that Gio wonders aloud whether someone that lethal should really be allowed to roam free. A tiny creature chirps out at the worst moment, and Gio flinches, hoping no one noticed the little thing following him. But the dangerous man leans in with a knowing smile. Hiding it does not mean he did not see it, he says, calling Gio by name. Rattled, Gio slips away, wondering how on earth he is supposed to report any of this to anyone. Meanwhile, a shadowed man in a suit lifts a camera, quietly documenting everyone at the event from the dark. His face twists as it clicks into place. Something is definitely off, he mutters, that curator is absolutely unawakened. The man is no bystander at all. Draped in ornate robes, he confesses he clawed his way up to priest just to set this stage for the solar cult. If anyone reports what he is planning, he is finished, and his conclusion is chillingly simple. He has to kill him. Then he spots the little creature watching him and realizes it belongs to that punk from earlier, guessing Gio is some kind of tamer. A cruel grin spreads across his face. He will catch the creature and trace it straight back to its master, a classic rookie mistake. Later, in the dark of his hotel room, Gio jolts awake with a single name on his lips, reaching for a warmth that is no longer there. His hand presses hard against his chest as the truth lands like ice. Honey is gone, and all he can whisper into the silence is please. Frost creeps across the glass as something cold and grief-stricken begins to wake inside him, and whatever comes next will not be gentle.